What's up, everyone? Welcome back to PS It's All About Sports. It is time for a Fantasy Football Friday. We're bringing you our first round mock PPR edition today, so let's get into it.
It's time for Fantasy Football Friday.
So, everyone, we're going to go through our first round mock here, and we're going to tell you number one is going to be Christian McCaffrey. Most drafts, he's going to be taken number one. He had a historic year. There's no reason not to take him number one. Of course, he's probably not going to put up the numbers he did last year, but even if he gets a little bit less each game or they limit him a little bit, he's still going to be easily probably the top fantasy player this year. So put him as your number one draft pick and don't even think twice about it. Now, the guy at number two is Saquon Barkley for me. I do think that Barkley carries a lot of value at this spot. And I know that's crazy to say, but I think that Barkley could be the number one guy this year. I think him and McCaffrey are going to go toe and toe. I think the Giants are going to utilize him a lot. He got hurt last year, but at the end he started picking it up. I think this offense is in for a bit of a rise here in this second year under the Daniel Jones offense. So number three, it's going to be another guy who I think at this spot, there's probably a few guys you could put here, but to me, there's really no argument. I'm going to put Dalvin Cook there. Second year going under the Gary Kubiak offense. Kubiak is actually taking over coordinator roles. He's going to be using a lot of those zone reads. Cook looked super quick. He looked very dominant all year. And I'll be the first to admit I missed on him. I had concerns about his injuries. And he did get hurt near the end of the year. But this shouldn't stop you from comfortably taking him at this number three spot. Now at number four, you could go a few ways with this. After these top three guys, obviously there's Henry, there's Zeke. Potentially some people may want to try to get Camara. But I think that this is a perfect spot to get Michael Thomas. I think Thomas showed us why he is the top wide receiver in the league last year. Under that Saints offense, he's going to get a lot of targets. He's going to get a lot of volume. He's going to get a lot of catches. And I think next year we'll see his touchdown production go up just a little bit. Comfortably take him as your wide receiver one around this point in the draft. Number five, it's going to be Zeke for me. Zeke is a guy that I wouldn't hate getting if he fell to me, but he's personally someone I'm not targeting this year. I think that we saw a new type of offense for the Dallas Cowboys. I think they're going to be pass first, especially with Mike McCarthy. McCarthy has not been known to produce a lot of really good fantasy running backs. And although Zeke is super talented, I think that they'll try to not try to limit his workload, but I think that his workload will be limited or capped off under this new system, and that concerns me a little bit. Like I said, if he falls to a specific spot, I will definitely grab him, maybe the 6 or 7 or 8. But for number 5, which is probably the spot he'll go for, I wouldn't want to grab him. I wouldn't want to be in that 5 spot this year. Number 6, again, another guy who came on strong at the end of the year, King Derrick Henry. He was a beast, especially during the playoffs. But this is a guy that I don't really want to target. If he falls to me, I'll be happy. I'm not too thrilled with these mid spots this year. I'd rather either be at the front or the back this year more than ever. Henry, he'll be a good running back again. My concern is the wear, and again, he does not get many catches out of the backfield. If Tennessee tries to draft someone to potentially be that pass catching back, will it limit his workload, especially on third downs? So Henry, this is a good spot for him. This is probably where he'll end up. But again, he's not a guy that I'm specifically targeting in this draft. Alvin Kamara is a guy I am targeting. This is a guy who, again, had 81 catches on the year. He missed a few games. And the biggest concern is touchdown production. Again, he did not have a lot of touchdowns last year. But if you look at what running backs do, they normally regress to the league average. So I think that next year he'll get a few more touchdowns that'll skyrocket his fantasy value. And I think that being at number 7 is a great spot for him. Potentially he could be a top 3 to 5 guy overall in fantasy this year. And I think that he could slip even further in several drafts to potentially 8 or 9 or 10. And that would be tremendous value. I would take him in a heartbeat. 8, we're going to go Davante Adams. He had a lot of injuries last year. He missed a few games. But when he came back, he looked like the beast that he was the past few years. That's what people, I think, are missing from this guy. Just because he had a bad season and was plagued by injuries doesn't mean that the talent is lost. And obviously, Aaron Rodgers is going to look his way more often than not. So he's going to have a terrific year, I think. If he slips any further than 8, which I could see at the back half, I would definitely suggest grabbing him because he's easily going to be a top 2 to 3 wide receiver. Maybe if his touchdowns go up again and he can stay healthy, maybe he can even challenge Michael Thomas for that number 1 spot. So definitely look to take Adams if you're looking for a top wide receiver this year. Number 9. This is where things get a little interesting on the back end. A lot of it has to do with strategy, in my opinion. Nick Chubb, I think he'll fall around this type of spot. My biggest concern with him is if Kareem Hunt stays, what does that do to his overall production? He had a really good first half of the year. And then the second half, he played well, but you definitely saw Kareem Hunt influencing the game plan and influencing the fantasy production of Nick Chubb. Again, I think this goes back to strategy. If you want a running back, he would definitely be the guy to target around this area. There are a few others you can make the argument for, but he would be a good pick. But if you want a wide receiver, maybe you draft the next guy, DeAndre Hopkins. Well, Hopkins, again, could be the most talented wide receiver in the league. He has the skill set to do that. He doesn't get as much volume as Michael Thomas. And at times, last year, he kind of disappeared throughout the season. That does not mean that you should be scared to take him. I think Watson utilizes him a lot this year. And again, he comes back into rare form. If you want a different wide receiver, number 11, the guy I have is Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill missed a lot of time with that fractured collarbone early on, but with this Kansas City offense, we know they're going to throw the ball, and they're going to throw the ball a lot. Tyreek Hill is going to be utilized deep. His speed is so good that he could torch opposing defenses whenever he gets the chance. Like I talked about, this really goes back to draft strategy. I'll be talking about that over the next few weeks to help out the beginners. Some people like to go running backs early and often because there's not as much of a crop of good talented running backs who will get you a solid floor. There's not many workhorse running backs, and wide receivers are very strong. But this past year, I think, really showed us that the elite wide receivers kind of can put your fantasy team over the edge, like the Michael Thomases, like the Chris Godwins, like the Mike Evans when he was healthy. Those type of guys can win you any given week. So it really depends. And number 12, this is where things get very interesting. There's a bunch of guys that I think could take this spot, but I'm going to put them in an order that I would like to take them. I am very high on Joe Mixon this year. I think he's a terrific back. I think that he has a great year with this Cincinnati Bengals new offense. Their offensive line will get healthy. Joe Burrow will be an amazing player, I think, in his first year, utilizing Joe Mixon a lot in the passing game. And he showed us his skill set a lot at the end of the year, which was very good. Aaron Jones, a guy that I specifically won't be targeting because I think that, again, going back to that touchdown regression, he had a great year in terms of touchdowns. I think he slips a little bit on that number, and I think where he'll be taken, which is around this turn, will be too high to where his production will be. If you could grab him in the mid-second to late second, then I would say definitely go do it, but I will not be taking him that early. Julio Jones, you could definitely make the argument for. Terrific wide receiver. I think with his age, though, there could be a potential to slip a little bit. And then again, Lamar Jackson, the biggest storyline for fantasy people is where does he go next year? Do people take a quarterback that early? He has the potential to produce top-notch numbers because of his running. If you take away his passing stats, he finishes as an RB2 in fantasy, which is just absurd. That type of floor, along with his touchdown production, I think, overall, really makes me want to take this guy and target him around that turn. And don't be afraid to do it, because a lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't take a quarterback early. Well, I disagree with that. I think that, again, it all depends on strategy, but you shouldn't be afraid to take a quarterback early, especially one with this type of floor and touchdown production. So again, I'd like to thank you guys for joining me. Follow us on Instagram, like our Facebook page, subscribe on YouTube, and check out our website, psitsallaboutsports.com. We're going to be doing a lot of great content this offseason with the draft and fantasy football, free agency talk. So, again, if it's not about sports, what's the point? Let's just keep rolling, guys. Thank you.